The film board gathers. The gang of thugs is here to take on a movie currently in theaters. And this month, we're following Joaquin Phoenix into a journey of sexual awakening and the longest punchline to every your mom joke ever made, Beau Is Afraid.
I am so sorry for what your daddy passed down to you. But I wanted a child, the greatest gift of my life.
I'm visiting my mother tomorrow.
Hi, Carrot. It's Mom. I'm just calling to say that I'm so excited to see you tomorrow. You're my angel, and I love you. Okay. I love you. Okay, bye, sweetie. I love you.
Are you at the airport?
I'm on my way. It's not safe, is it? What do you think I should do?
I'm sure you'll do the right thing, sweetheart.
Welcome back.
I hit you with my car.
What?
I know.
Welcome, everybody, to the Film Board. I'm Pete Wright, and I'm joined this week by two men for whom I have to imagine the struggle to steal stars from every other movie review to jam them into this movie's coffers is simply insurmountable. It's Justin Jaeger and Tommy Metz. Hello, boys.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
A couple of quotes, because as you do, you listen to reviews and you think, you want to hear how the filmmakers feel about their own movie. So I would just give you a set of quotes.
These are from Ari. Now,
these are from Ari.
You say filmmaker. Okay,
Yep,
great.
Yep.
I want to hear this.
A paranoid man embarks on an epic odyssey to get home to his mother. That's the log line. Ari says, if you pumped a 10-year-old full of Zoloft and made him fetch your groceries, that's this movie. Or it's like a Jewish Lord of the Rings, except he's just going to his mom's house. Or I want to put you in the experience of being a loser. Or after Midsommar, I had enough goodwill to light it on fire.
That's the one.
That's the one.
That's the one.
That's the money
right
shot.
there.
You guys, This movie is, A24 gave him $35 million to make this movie. And I think as of this is his second weekend, I think it's barely crested 5 million. I think there are, so as you prepare your opening thoughts, I would very much like to hear your thoughts on how this movie got made. Because it feels like a movie that, by all rights, given today's movie market, should not exist.
I feel like we're going through a real renaissance of that, which means it's all going to be crashing down. But like Damien Chazelle just cashed in all of his chips with Babylon. Beau Is Afraid just cashed in his chips and they're all like extremely long and they're all doing, it's very interesting. It seems like old timey Hollywood. All we hear is about how everyone's pinching pennies and won't do anything and it's all IP and all of this stuff. And then they do the exact opposite and spend a whole bunch of money on it. So I'm more than anything, I'm glad this movie exists. And I had a pretty good amount of fun once I decided I'm not going to be able to figure this out.
I want to hear when that was.
Yeah, right.
That's really awesome because I think I still haven't reached that point. And my brain is still
trying
to go like, wait a minute, but what about
the thing that I held on to from the beginning was, what if you just made a list of everything that you're nervous about?
Yeah.
Put it in a line and then constructed a story around it with mommy issues, because it's everything from being blamed for things that you're not doing to spiders, to gun anxiety, to streets and cars. Everything. It's everything in this movie. PTSD. So it's just fascinating.
Talking about how it got made, I read somewhere that I think that you're going to get into this a little bit, Pete, but the idea that he had a script or a concept about this before even Midsommar and
2011
and Hereditary.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to think of it, because after I saw it, I was thinking like, oh, I see some of the symbolism that he used in those movies cropping up here. So maybe it's like, oh, these are his favorite things, or these are the things that give him the most anxiety, to go with what Tommy said. And he wants to sort of paint them out, right? This is the thing. And so he's still working on that. But then reading that this existed before, this is kind of a foundation for his art as he goes there. And I agree with Tommy 100% that I want these movies to be made. So I'm glad that these kind of cashing in chips are happening. That being said, it's a mess in my head. Like I don't even know. I want to talk about all of it to extreme levels, even though I didn't enjoy like any of it.
Really?
Really?
Any
Oh
of
man,
it.
that surprises me a lot.
Well, and so I want to compare it to other, and in the Mindbender sort of way, right? These are my favorite kind of movies, but I didn't have anything tangible to hook onto. Like I couldn't go, wait, is this? Is this X? Is this Y? I couldn't do that. And my brain is still trying to do that. Like I said with Tommy here, I compare it most in terms of something that we've done here on the film board. I compare it most to I'm Thinking of Ending Things, which I think like, in a way, I got to a point very artistically where I was like, oh, this is good for me here. And I can't do that with this movie. So as much as I love, and we, even when Tommy and I did the Mindbender episode, like we struggled to call it a genre. Like this is the type of movie that I like the most, but it never got to the place that I needed it to get to. And that was something that was tough for me with this movie. So in my initial thoughts, I mean, I'm glad it got made. I'm glad they're letting him cash in his chips. I hope he gets to do another one. People coming out of the theater with me were like, this is why you don't let directors do whatever they want to do. I mean, it was like, everybody was just utterly disappointed walking out of the theater that I was in, but I want to see more. It's great art. Yeah. It's great art. It's profound art. It's just not that good.
That's so interesting to me, JJ. I really wonder. I think I want to put my chips on 10 years from now. JJ is going to fall in love with this movie.
That very possibly. Very possibly.
For me, I think I'm in the camp with Tom. Like once I realized just let it go, I was able to kind of track that movie and stop looking at my watch, because
this is starting to become a metaphor for my life.
Yeah.
But I just want to say, just let it go. But anyway, keep going.
Well, because the first hour and some odd, right, is to me like that was, I thought this movie, my whole conception of this movie was going to be, here's a guy who lives with persistent anxiety and paranoia, and this is the world that he sees, which is absurdly violent and assaulting, and that his journey was going to be like, how do I get control of that? How do I come to terms with that? Is the pharmaceutical industrial complex going to help me or be a curse to me from that? Like his level of fear really got to me. And that first hour, I was looking at my watch every 5 minutes.
What do you mean looking at your watch? To represent what? That you were bored?
Like when is it going to be over?
When is it going to be over? Like how time is passing so slowly because I am being assaulted. I'm so uncomfortable with what I'm seeing.
Wow. Yeah.
And then I sort of let go of that and realized, okay, this is a 3-hour movie, and if I'm looking at my watch every 5 minutes, it's going to seem like a 12-hour movie. I just need to get on the ride. And I'm not going to lie to you, I fell in love with it. I think I really fell in love with it. And I think it's because you'd written something in the notes, JJ, and I want to talk about that, because for me, I think this movie represents kind of the stuff I love about Ari Aster. And I should say, after Midsommar, Ari Aster became like number one on the filmmakers I hate myself a little bit for loving. I've seen just about everything he's done. I haven't seen his short Eddington and acting class with Ari Aster, but I've seen everything else. Tino's Dick Fart, seen it. The Turtle's Head, seen it. Something, The Strange Thing About the Johnsons. Oof. Wow. Hate it. It was terrible.
Is weird.
It's very weird, but I've also seen this movie, Beau, which was his short in 2011. And have either of you seen this one in particular?
No. I know Brian has.
I've only seen the 2 big ones.
Yeah.
So
okay.
And it took me that long, this long, meaning 47 years of life, to get here. So
yes.
So put on your kid gloves with me here.
Beau is it is another sort of mother story, kind of. We have a guy who's extremely paranoid, and it's essentially the first bit of this movie where he's going to see his mother, and he leaves his key in the door and his luggage, and he goes upstairs to grab his dental floss, and he comes back and the keys are gone. But that's where things start to go sideways, because he turns around and sees a tail going into the shadows out his back door, backsliding door, and he freaks out, and he builds this this like spring-loaded knife machine, and he puts it in front of the door because he thinks somebody's going to come in and get him. And then it turns out somebody comes in from the door behind him, another hooligan, and he stabs him and kills him. But then it cuts to Mother. We see Mother's hands, and Mother is actually a furry monster that is stealing keys, and he has a name for that monster, like the name of the monster, but it really is because Beau, the character, had used a Ouija board and conjured this monster who comes and steals keys, and you see the monster's workbench is covered with keys. And so Mom is literally a monster, and the metaphor of Mom the monster actually plays, and she is the thing that's preventing you from making steps in your life and moving out and going out into the world because she keeps stealing your keys. And there are layers to it, right? So this movie comes from that. If you can find it, you should see it, because it's kind of crazy, right? That this movie has those kinds of genes. And the first few minutes of this movie are Beau. The thing I want to come back to about why this movie represents good stuff to me, and I'm so curious your thoughts, and then I swear I'll shut up. It goes with the big three, right? Hereditary, Midsommar, and Beau Is Afraid. I did not like Hereditary because I liked the very first, however long it is, and then the last 5 minutes. I felt like the last 5 minutes, it went from this beautiful, like, subtextual journey of paranormal, experience and all of the craziness that's going on with Hereditary to a literal explanation of demons. And I hated that. I thought that was like a turn at the end that so undermined the rest of the message of that movie, and I have really bad taste in my mouth. Midsommar starts very literally. She's dealing with grief and suicide and all of that, and goes subtextual, and I'm big thumbs up on that. I really liked it. At the end, it's like, oh my God, like she's like we transition into the world of metaphor so beautifully, and I love it. This movie is all subtext all the time, and if you try to figure it out, I think it'll break your face. Like, I think it's impossible to get there from here. So now I'll shut up, and I'm curious, JJ, if you want to take on your interpretation of what this movie and why that's hard for you.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing. I feel like I have a broken face. I mean, the thing that's difficult is that all the reviews, everything that I'm reading about the film, is really sort of judging it on this sort of realness, right, of it, the sort of actual story that we get presented with. And I think it's literally impossible for the entire story to be actual, and for you to actually, I was going to say judge, for you to interpret the art that's seen on screen for Beau Is Afraid and say that that the whole thing is actual is really confusing. You need some sort of artistic leap or creative leap to do it. And that's why I like more your idea here that you're saying, Pete, that it's all subtextual and that you don't need to actually get any sort of story. But then where do we go with that? And that's where I get confused, because the narrative journey, or trying to figure out what is the subtext or what the message is, or what, and forget all that about what the message should be, but what's the message for me here? And I can't get there with this movie. It feels like a wash of confusion. And if it is a wash of anxiety or a wash of fear, those things all make sense. But then where do I understand, the way that I approach so many movies that we talk about is from the writer's perspective, or trying to understand what was in their mind. And when you describe Beau as the short, that seems to feel more connected, where this all of a sudden just spreads wildly and goes completely out of control in a way that, if it is just a showcase of anxiety, then it actually doesn't work for me in the way that I want it to be in terms of a mind bender. So, I think your point about me maybe falling in love with it in 6 years or something is really well taken. I just am not there yet.
I found it to be, and I don't think I'm coming up with anything profound here, but I thought it was a test. It's one man's journey. It's a test that his entire life has been lorded over by his pharmaceutical mother. She has incorporated him in all advertising, in every single thing. And she starts with just this one sort of thing. And then she's getting into what looks like psychotropic drugs, like all sorts of stuff, from Zit cream to that. And then it's hinted that she can see him at all times because there's that picture from inside of his
because
apartment.
she also her company also runs a security
security. And so it seems like, for me, the thing, and it doesn't necessarily go all together, like I haven't been able to figure it all out, but it's his final test to sort of live a life that is of his own and do things that does not involve his mother or his fear about his mother, to get out of the horrific fear that she put on him, that she really sort of made him into the person he is. And he is tested throughout, and he is judged throughout. He's judged by the therapist, who just writes the word guilty. Not I feel guilty, just guilty. What's her name? Amy Ryan whispers to stop incriminating himself. It's almost like he's being judged by either us, the audience, or by whoever is in the trial at the end. It's like he's being judged by life, and he is unable to do it. He fails in his mission, and that's why he is, I think, judged very harshly at the very end.
So is the test okay? So I'm going to go with you on that because I want to get into that. So is the test real or imagined? Is the test something within his brain, or is it a Truman Show? I mean, it's this kind of thing of like, you bring up the therapist writing guilty, but is the therapist part of the show? Is the therapist part of the test? This is where I start to get really loose in my understanding of it, in that another movie that you guys talked about on the next reel was The Game. And The Game, this kind of thing of when you go into the game and then everybody is not real or interacting with you in a real way, then at what point do you say the game is not a game anymore, or it's over? You know, why do you start believing anything versus everything being part of the game?
What makes it so fascinating for me and so difficult, it's such a double-edged sword, is it is put through the prism of his psyche, and his psyche is one of incredible inhibition. What's the opposite of inhibition? Inhibition? Of anxiety, I mean, parts of this movie feel like a panic attack. And so everything is heightened. I think that, no, I don't think that his therapist is really in on it. I think that he's sort of bringing that in a very uncomfortable way, that when I see my therapist write something down, sometimes the worst part of me is saying like boring,
it's
or guilty or something like that. Like I'm being judged all the time. And so when he's running across the street, I don't really believe that there are corpses in the street, but it feels like that. It feels like that to him. And I'm not saying that that's a very satisfying altogether watch, but I think you bring this entire idea of judgment and anxiety and fear, and then put it through strain it through someone who's always in the middle of that. And that's sort of, it's a movie, to use a phrase that I've used before, I can't remember what it was, but it's kind of like a tone poem at times. It's so surrealistic. It's much more literal in a way than David Lynch, but it has the same kind of feeling of like, I'll do whatever I can to get you to feel this way in this certain moment. And why is that man up on his ceiling? Why does it seem like, I mean, there's a possibility he drowns in that scene. Drowning comes back over and over and over again throughout. Water is the biggest thing. So there's a lot of different ways to go about it.
There's so much of it. Like as I'm watching it, I realize this is kind of a literal interpretation of the stages of grief, right? Like we watch him as they build his backstory right through, and we, as you say, Tommy, that's just all of the advertising that she put him on. Like I kept my first note when I walked out of the theater was, which came first, the stock photo or the person who appears in it? Like it's such a weird, like looping reality that he gets to be a part of, and that creates a person of trauma. Like the Beau that we meet in his apartment is a person existing in trauma, and so we get to watch him go through the denial and the anger and the, what are the other ones? Bargaining, depression,
Dabda,
acceptance. Yeah, Dabda. And so he finally, acceptance is the last look on his face before the boat implodes, right? Like to me, his look is finally, okay, I'm sitting in judgment because Richard Kind is here, and and he gets sucked down, and that last look on his face, I think Joaquin Phoenix is one of the most like beautifully detail-oriented actors. And his communication for me was, okay, I'm finished. I'm accepting this journey has been hard. And if we take it figuratively, yes, he's in the boat of water, and he joins joins the great consciousness that is the fluidity of reality. But actually, in his real life, maybe he found a way to leave his apartment without having to run across the street to get water. Maybe he found a way to have a relationship without feeling like just the act of climax is going to kill this one party in the engagement, right? Like maybe he's able to conquer those things as a result of this weird head trip that he goes through. And I think, to me, there's something kind of beautiful about that.
Yeah, I mean, but yes, I agree with you. If I could get there, I would be there with you. But this concept of what is real and what is not is something that's holding me to this sort of point of confusion. I mean, that idea of let's take the acceptance as the simple resolution to the journey of beating fear, beating anxiety, to use what you said, getting out of the house. If that's it, then when was... I keep saying when, but maybe nothing was real. Who is the character and what is the feeling is all subjective based on what you bring to it. And I can't find anything, going back to like hang my coat on to say, okay, this is where we are. You know?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't disagree. Even the meal that he heats up. Did you see what it was? It was Aloha. No. It's the best of Hawaii and Ireland, which is insane. So even that, and I think that's just sort of like maybe like just sort of a fun joke, because so much of the jokes are textual in this movie. But even that, like there's very little to, But I think that's kind of the point. And I'm not saying that makes it easier for you. It's just the idea of that that's the wash. It's all alien, it's all crazy, and it's like such a list of my fears all in a row.
Yes, yeah,
it's crazy.
It's like Inception, and here we are on this movie, and I'm going to spoil a different movie. I was relieved because of just how I interpreted Inception when Michael Caine came out and said, I did not understand this movie at all. Right. And I asked Chris, I said, what's going on? And he said, you really want to know? Like, you really, like, you don't want your read on it? Yes, I really want to know what is going on. And he tells him that, anytime you're in the scene, that's in real life, right? Michael Caine, anytime you're in the scene, that's in real life. And that, to me, was really nice to hear, because for some reason there's something really satisfying for that movie, knowing that there's a key, and now I can unlock that movie in a different way because I'm closer to the artist's interpretation of how it was written. And this movie, I found, like, I wonder, is there a key that Aster is ever going to allow us to apply to this movie? My hunch is, listening to boatloads of interviews from this guy, he's never going to give us that, right? He's not going to give us that. And when he's asked directly, what do you think about people who tell you, say, well, this is all like, he's really working out some issues. This is really Ari Aster's like love letter to his mom. And his response is, yeah, I guess I'm really begging for it, given the kinds of movies I make. That's it. Full stop. Like, yeah, this is who he is as a filmmaker. And so for me, I've obviously only seen it once. I saw it yesterday night. It is so fresh. And but it is a movie that I walked out of saying, okay, maybe if I don't try to interpret it, if I assume that everything is in his head from the first time we meet him after birth, literally this movie opens on birth from the POV of the birthed. Maybe I can understand who this guy is a little bit better, because I've had flights of fancy like that myself. And So like that, the whole animated sequence, can we did that have any sway over you? His animated sort of fable journey?
That's when I kept trying to make it into like a Greek mythology. Like I kept bouncing back and forth between the Odyssey and Joseph Campbell, and it didn't really fit in a lot of those things, but that was sort of the clearest part of it. I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, visually, I mean, it makes sense that it is beautiful. It doesn't fit with anything else that I'm trying to reconcile in the story. This sort of, snake eating its tail of what's happening in the mind of a person imagining, and I'm not even going to talk about Beau in this case, but in the case of Ari Aster, imagining a character watching a play of something that ends up to be about the character while on the hero's journey. I mean, it gets lost for me. It reminds me also of another movie that we did on Trailer Rewind called The Congress, which is really interesting about that. It shows IP and I'm forgetting her name now. Princess Bride.
Yeah, wasn't she married to Sean Penn for a while?
Yes.
Givens?
Yeah. No. And House of Cards.
Yeah.
I'm going to look her up now so that we can talk about this. But it starts off, the whole idea of the film is that that she is not going to be a popular actress anymore. It starts off in this sort of really Robin Wright Penn is who we're talking about, and that her agent comes to her with a sort of indecent proposal of, we're going to sell the concept of you to the studios so that they can use you in anything in perpetuity going forward. This will be the last deal that you ever make in your life. And it kind of goes, then she does sell this so that she can take care of her sick son and this thing. And then she ends up going into this cartoon world that is created of all people that have bought these other ideas, the concepts of actors and the concept of, and it's very odd and very confusing. And she's trying to find her way out of this life that she's led for herself. It's Robin Wright playing Robin Wright with the concept of this character of who she is versus who she really is. And it reminds me a lot of that, in that all of a sudden this play that Beau or Ari or whomever is recognizing themselves in, what is that? And how is that part of how we experience this? I don't even call it a story. I like the tone poem. I like the wash idea. What is it, how we experience what we're seeing in any art?
Could he be seeing an example of a successful life? It is Jobish in that he sort of loses everything towards the end, but he really goes out for it, and he travels and he finds people and he has sons, even though, as Brian is pointing out, he can't even have sons because he's not allowed to have sex. All of these things.
And he wakes up from that while he's experiencing it, right?
Yeah.
Because they question him, and I say wake up because it's like a dream where it's like, oh, wait a second, this is not the way I live my life, so how could this be possible?
Right.
I mean, it's these contradictions that we experience in dream all the time.
But could that just be the idea of him being the opposite of him who is free? It's the opposite of someone who's terrified to go across the street to get a thing of water. Instead, he travels for thousands of miles and talks to people with no faces and really leads a full life and gets knocked down and gets back up again, Chumbawamba style.
So it's a subtle delusion of grandeur for an agoraphobiac?
Well, maybe a delusion of grandeur, or if we want to go with this super weird, I'm chasing it like a hound judgment idea, he's being shown the answer. This is what you could do. You still have room to do this. And he is not able to do it. Even when he gets hung up on the details. If like waking up from a dream, wait, you can't even do that. That's so not the point of what that thing is. It's supposed to be the journey. And instead he just gets hooked up. I don't know. It's a way to...
It kind of is, though, Tom. Like, it kind of is. Like, this movie is Albert Brooks in Defending Your Life. If they told you what was going on, and it wasn't very funny the entire time.
And I love Defending Your Life. Yeah.
I know. I love... That's right.
It's Defending Your Life with no Rip Torn.
Yeah.
He's just walking
Right.
around.
Richard Kind is playing Rip Torn, right?
Yeah.
So I
Right.
there is a lot like there's a lot to that. Like part of it feels like Ari Aster saw Defending Your Life and was like, what if it was like my take on it? And this is what we
Yeah.
get, right?
What
Like
if it was my life?
yeah.
And I'm not funny. I'm just really
And
I'm just
yet,
really horrific.
I'm curious your take on that, particularly JJ, because I laughed at this movie much more than I expected to laugh.
Mm-hmm.
I actually did too. And I think I did find parts of it funny. I don't think I found the same parts funny that you did. In terms of what we've talked about sort of leading up to it. Some of the horrific things I found were just kind of plain horrific. Like, what the heck is that? But that being said, I did end up laughing a lot. And I think I was prepped for that a little bit in that I read a lot of the run up from Ari Aster saying that he envisioned this as a comedy.
Mm-hmm.
So I let myself get there in ways too. But a lot of the horrific stuff, it was too much for me.
Tom, you thought it was a real laugh a minute?
I thought a lot of it was really funny. Brian is bringing up like the shoe and the computer monitor, the insane side effect of if you don't have a certain amount of water right after you take a pill, you'll die. I mean, everything is just dialed up to 10, which is really fascinating and
that's
exhausting.
what anxiety feels like.
That's what anxiety feels like. That's the prism that I found alarming and alarmingly recognizable at times.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's hard to talk beat by beat about this movie, but we can talk about some performances in the movie that stand out. And obviously, like we got to start a little bit with Joaquin Phoenix. I do love the guy, and this movie, I can't believe I'm saying this aloud because I did not have a good experience with it the first time around, but this movie made me want to watch Joker again. Where'd you stand on Joaquin?
I think he was great. I loved what he did in this movie. I have not seen Joker. I still am anti-Joker, even though I understand why it's a special movie and what everyone says about it. But I have a protest against Joker because of the way that the IP is being used.
That is a central problem that I have too. So
yeah. So I don't think I will be able to.
Ocean too. Ocean hates it because they give him a backstory.
Well, and I mean that's a great sort of criticism of the idea of what villains and all these things. I don't know that that's important to me, as important to me as the idea of I now have 6 Jokers and they interweave through one universe that I'm exaggerating the number. But so the point being is I haven't seen Joker, but I liked Joaquin Phoenix here. I think it's interesting that he's kind of, from what I objectively think is that he is kind of doing the same kind of things in films, that he's playing this, I mean, as Ari said, this loser. I mean, we think way back to Her too, right? Like that was maybe the first step down the path for what his personal character is going to go into his films. I don't know. I like him too. I think he did a great job here. I will watch him in all different kinds of stuff.
Well, and because he says yes to different kinds of stuff. That's the thing that I like. We're getting the Joaquin Phoenix like performance, but in wildly different things. And I think that's interesting to me. I think he makes really interesting choices, and he's a super cerebral actor. I think this movie highlights one of the behaviors that I find actually really frustrating, which is somebody's talking to you on the phone and you're holding the phone to your ear, but you're in such a state of shock or something that you don't speak for feels like minutes at a time, and that becomes interminable for me in this movie. As much as I do like so much of it, there are some of those little behavior things that I think, man, you could have cut 45 minutes out of this movie by just letting people talk on the damn phone. So anyway, Tom, you have anything?
I loved him. I loved him, and it was, I mean, there's not a ton of movie, or maybe there are, but like this, he's in every single scene. Nothing exists really without him. That's rare. And then the mastery it takes to be able to, I mean, he does become annoying sometimes, but I think it's on purpose. The way to measure where to be when throughout this movie, when there's so many subtle levels of freaking out, that it could have been so easily one note. Incredibly. I mean, I just can't imagine the amount of planning to go into this. If he's the kind of actor that does that. Yeah,
for sure. We should talk just briefly about his testicles. Don't you think?
because
they become such a storyline. So we're introduced. I think we're introduced to his testicles the first time he's in his boxers in his apartment, and you can see them through his boxer shorts. And I'm sitting there with a friend watching this movie, and he says, I think we can see his testicles there shaped in his boxer shorts. And I said, no, that's not right. And then later, Nathan Lane, he's at Nathan Lane and Amy Ryan's house, and Nathan Lane plays a surgeon who puts him back together after this stabbing event.
Oh, right.
And says, your testicles are massively distended. Like we should probably think about doing something about that. And it becomes an ongoing thing until finally he gets to have sex with Parker Posey, and we see his testicles, and then he goes up into the attic and we see the giant manifestation of this huge penis with a big mouth and face, and it's a monster penis with like human-sized testicles. And this manifestation of his rage, played by Soldier, who can't get over his trauma, is stabbing at his testicles, and that whole metaphor of kind of being able to come clean with your relationship with sex.
Point of order,
your mother.
Not human-sized testicles the size of humans.
Yes,
okay.
That is an absolutely
that
is a really a critical note, JJ. I appreciate that. The court stands down. So that becomes a lot of this character's sort of weird motivation, is the fact that he had made a promise on the back of a picture that he didn't even write, which was "I'll wait for you," to this young girl, Elaine, and he finally gets to have sex with her in the form of Parker Posey, and there you go. The death of Parker Posey. Did that surprise anybody?
Yeah, very much so.
Oh, good. Okay,
100%.
Okay,
yeah. Found it a little scary.
Yeah.
But that's the point about the thing too, of that that's one of the many things, probably the 15 or 20 things that I can't really put my finger on, of why it can't be a textual narrative.
Right.
This is something that's impossible.
100%.
So that's why it's imagined, not real.
Well, it's also playing with the horror trope, right? Of the virginal fantasy of the first sexual experience. And it turns out it does kill somebody, because sex and death are inseparable in film. And this is sort of the manifestation of it in a really kind of graphic way. And what we're told in the story building up to it is that it's the men who die in his family line when they have sex. And in our final experiment here with it, he survives, but his partner dies just frozen and falls off the bed in like extreme rigor mortis that sets on quite quickly. And that does become just another layer of the fantasy reveal. When mom comes into the picture, she's not dead. Like it is a whole thing. It actually, that's the last 45 minutes of the movie, is your mother is watching you have sex and you killed the woman. And I told you that this was going to happen. Something horrible was going to happen. And you didn't listen. Finger wag. And that plays out. I don't know.
What's worse than death for someone who's riddled with anxiety? The fact that they become a murderer and have to deal with the fact that they killed someone for the rest of whatever amount of is left of their life.
Right.
Ugh.
There are a lot of layers to that particular relationship, and so many of those little details that are hard to kind of parse for me. Right, Patti LuPone plays Mona Wasserman, the CEO of this massive company. And correct me on this little note: did you catch the logo at the beginning of the movie?
It's her company.
That was an MW logo, right?
Yeah.
So her company made the movie. Talk about JJ like being inside of this universe. That is like the first signal that we're inside a complete manifestation.
She owns the town
She
too.
owns
It's
the
Washington.
town, the film, everything. Yeah. So that final explosion, when you realize that she staged her own death, and that she staged her death almost in order to make a point to her son. Is that how you read it? Why did she do that?
Didn't she explain it? Because it was the reveal about the birthmark, with talking about some woman that we had never, I don't think, ever met before, except real quick. So I found that very confusing.
Yes. She wanted to prove
Yeah.
that he didn't care enough
about her. Again,
That's
going
what
to
it was.
those such
Okay.
extraordinary comic links to actually prove
Because-
a point about their mother-son relationship.
Because she has the Truman Show and she
Mhm.
has the game in play, that the entire hero journey
That's
that we follow is going to be observed by her as he has to experience
Right.
her
Good.
death, so that she can use it as evidence in the trial that we see with Richard Kind at the end, that all of those pieces of the puzzle of, yes, you didn't really care about me, and here are the examples.
And he tries to argue, but his lawyer is too far away. It is too insignificant to be able to argue his
And
case.
Clearly
Did you see
not mic'd.
in that picture of her made up of all of the different employees, it sounds like? Did you see Nathan
Yes.
Lane in there?
Oh, no,
Nathan
I didn't.
Lane
Is
was
he
at
in
the
there?
top.
I didn't.
Because a lot of the people seem to be like the people that invaded his house that were in the street stuff. Nathan
Yeah.
Lane is in the
Yeah.
top right of it. So, like, again,
Was
with
Amy
the-
Ryan? Did you see Amy
I didn't
Ryan?
see.
Must have been.
She must.
She
She
must
probably.
have been.
But yeah,
It wouldn't
So if
surprise
every-
me if Kylie Rogers was in there too, the daughter.
right.
Right.
And that gets
Somehow.
in again to the Twilight Zone, to the Truman Show / stop incriminating yourself. Stop incriminating yourself. If every
Yeah. Interesting.
So again, jumping out sort of to take this objective view, if everyone is working for her, if then we look at this as a textual story, if everyone is that, then what is the purpose? What is Beau's purpose? I mean, in the Truman Show, we get that everyone is working for the film, and we have the outside, so many different inferences of outside of the show.
it's for rating.
So we get a sense of what Truman's journey is. But then if we were never outside the show. So because you mentioned Truman's in or not Truman, Beau is in every scene. So what is the purpose for Beau? What are we learning for Beau here? And how do we relate that to our own journey?
I think he's sort of reviewing. I still go back to the idea of a test, and he's just at a point where it's like his last chance to do something with his life. Figuratively, I don't believe that all of this stuff is real. I think that everything is inside of his mind.
Yeah. Inside of a mind,
but I
the
don't know the
outside of
next
which we
part of it.
never see.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think it's like, I wish there was something that I could hold on to where like he dies in the very beginning. And this is some sort of going to wherever you go after you die, seeing
Donnie
your
Darko.
life. Yeah, exactly. Seeing everything that
Yeah.
goes through and getting one last chance to either prove or not prove. He finds acceptance in losing. I mean, he does not win at the end, other than
The
getting
month you
accepted.
get before you get hit by the jet engine. Yeah,
Right.
that kind of thing. I think conceptually it's interesting. We talked about the play being a delusion of grandeur. But if we step one level even further out, and we think that Beau is a character that we actually never meet, and that the Beau that we experience through this entire journey, including that delusion of grandeur, is the Beau that you would have if you were afraid of everything, if you were riddled by anxiety, and that Beau, that fear, that anxiety goes through birth and is killed at the end. And so the what was watching, the actual consciousness that's created this story is something that we never meet. We only see the surreal ideas that get born, that die, that are killed in extravagant and terrifying ways. And that maybe you're right. Maybe this consciousness that created this terrified Beau killed off that fear in an effort to do something different that we never get to experience outside of the story.
That is absolutely where I end up with it. That this is
I love it.
Yeah.
I like that so much more than what before we started talking.
Right? Like I actually see this as a weirdly hopeful story, because when when the boat explodes at the end, to me that look of acceptance means I have given myself and taken the agency over which I can now absolve myself of all of the feelings of pain, regret, hate, anger, rage, confusion, anxiety, all of those things. And we just don't get to see what it looks like when he's in the real world ever. We never get to see that. And so like that closing credits roll, which I also have to add is a gorgeous take on closing credits, is like just over as the theater leaves is like, oh, he is no longer of consequence. His mental state is no longer of consequence. And so the audience leaves because he is on the other side of that water, if we were to go under the water, is him waking up, right? It's like Beau in a real world that we never get to meet. And I really love that. Like, I love the idea that this is a movie about conquering something painful, and it's told through this lens of sort of horror-ish, but, you know, that's not a complete story.
Huh.
I like it.
What do you think, Tom? You're the, huh.
Yeah, well, I didn't.
No, you didn't.
I didn't. Well, I guess I thought that his moment of acceptance, I didn't see it as a happy moment of acceptance. I saw him as seeing that him giving up. He failed. He was put on something to do something. He failed. And then because he doesn't just go into the water and everyone leaves. It struggles. He is drowning under there. And Ari Aster makes sure that we hear that for a while. And so,
yeah, for a little while.
Yeah,
right.
for a little while. So
because that's the pain that comes with acceptance, right? Like, it's hard. This whole movie is hard.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yes.
I'm not going to recommend it to anyone. I'll just tell you that. I love what we're doing here.
Yeah.
And I love this about all movies. I mean, you brought up Inception. Like, that's one of my favorite ones to sort of like go around the horn about. But I can't recommend this movie to anyone unless they want to have this conversation afterwards. I saw a review about it that said, if you don't like digging into the symbols and digging into the potential that this story has, you will not like this movie. And I love that. I still don't super love the movie, but I love what we're doing here. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's my favorite part of this. And I think it's great for that, but I don't know if everybody feels the same way.
I don't know what you're talking about. I walked out of the movie and immediately called my mother. You have to see this movie.
I like that we found out that the kid playing teenager Beau was not photoshopped, that he's a real person.
He's a real person.
AI.
No.
You see, he's had to like put out a statement saying, "I'm not created by AI."
Yeah.
I love it.
That's crazy because his face is sort of cherubically perfect,
right?
Like
very AI-ish,
a little bit. Like it's right. He is what a computer thinks a precious boy face looks like.
Precious boy face.
I did love the. I guess 2 more points. I loved the Richard Kind performance because it is brief, but we get a great like phone conversation with him. At the moment I recognized his voice, I was like, oh God, I hope we see him. And this isn't just stunt casting. And it was nice to see him in the defense. And the daughter taking Beau on the ride and making him do drugs.
Yeah, right.
She's rough stuff. She's rough stuff. She
was one of the scariest characters to me. Her screaming, her random screaming as he is in eternal waking from different drug-induced and naps and on the couch. Whew, the hair on my arm stood up every time she screamed.
And then she drinks paint.
Yeah.
That was like, as much as I found myself laughing at this movie, like these elements of human tragedy were extreme for me to watch. Like that was hard. The other one is that like this has a mass fire gun incident, right? A shooter at this fair, and even though we know we're in the head of this fantasy experience, that military guy is pretty real and pretty out of his gourd, and so that is also a challenge to watch. It's one of the more challenging elements, I think, for me in this film, given where we are right now. Any other highlights?
Yeah, the daughter, before she drinks paint, I mean, she's kind of the opposite of Beau. She's such a foil, and I love one of my favorite lines is, "What's in this? 3 things." That's how you describe drugs. But like her parents have made a shrine to their long lost son, and they are so protective of it that they won't even let someone stay in there. She takes the paint by the horns and like ruins it, writes his name on it, and then takes herself out of the equation. These are all things that he is completely unable to do. Again, he's being shown things. He's being shown ways to escape, way to some agency, anything, and he's unable to do it. The most he does is like even when he runs through a plate glass window, he still has like that protective, the tracker on him the entire
On
time.
him.
He's never
Yeah.
ever free, which
He's
is
never free.
Yeah.
I was listening to an interview with Nathan Lane. He was doing a bit on one of the late shows, and they talked a lot about every other thing that he's doing. And finally, at the end, he was there to promote this movie. And finally, at the end, he says, so tell us about Beau Is Afraid. And Nathan Lane, he can't promote this movie. Like, it's unpromotable. He's like,
100%.
what in this movie would you be willing to say? And all he says is, I think Ari Aster is an incredibly daring filmmaker. And this is an incredibly daring film, and it's not for everyone. And I thought that's the most like promotable line you can get one of your principal stars to say about this movie. That's very telling. I think just as we get toward the end here, I am, and I think you both agree, I'm delighted that this movie exists.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that I have another full watch in it for me. I delight that it
definitely
exists.
I'm excited.
I clearly like it more than you.
I'm so excited to see it again. I'm not going to see it probably in the theater because I want more control over it.
Yes.
But so when it comes out, 100%, I want to see it again.
Well, that's what I mean.
would do it with Tommy.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to do it myself.
Fun. Well, that's what I mean, full watch. This is a commitment of a watch in a single sitting. And I think for me, there are so many beats, so many segments of this film that I can go back and sink my teeth into. I'm not sure that I needed to engage in 100% of it in a single sitting. I got what I needed to, and I love that it exists. And maybe that will show up in my rating.
Yeah, I want to spend more time with all of there's so much density with all of the things, like just even the choice of the spider, the recluse spider.
Right.
He's a recluse.
Okay.
I mean, it's just like
He's
everything. He's the recluse spider in his own apartment, and then we see it.
Yeah. Okay. So since you bring up the recluse, this is where the movie isn't perfect for me because, and maybe this is to your point too, JJ, that there are things in these movies that I feel like, or in this movie, because it is such a stream of consciousness, we're in her head, like all the things that I celebrate about it. When you introduce specific plot devices, I kind of want to see a resolution to that plot device. I didn't feel like the spider was satisfactorily like resolved to me. I wanted somebody bit, frankly, who it was the Chekhov's brown recluse. Same thing with Chekhov's pharmaceuticals. Like, was that storyline, the pharmaceutical storyline, satisfactorily, like don't drink water or you'll die storyline, satisfactorily resolved? Like, that was my sort of superficial viewer take on a lot of these points that I do think kind of
it forced him out of his apartment.
Well, and that's what I would say about them is that for Ari Aster, those are comedic bits.
Yeah.
Right. And like, they don't need to pay off because it's funny that exists. And then we're moving on to a different bit later on.
Oh, but JJ, that is, I mean, to that point, exactly. That's part of Ari Aster's challenge is he starts a thing that he sees as a bit and it goes on so long, it becomes a narrative device. Right. Like he ended it as if it was a bit, but it was way too big to just be a bit.
I agree 100%.
So I think that is an astute challenge of Ari Aster's films. So it's no Midsommar, but it's pretty darn good for yours truly. Do we want to talk about how we're going to rate it? Do you need a second?
I think we should.
You need a second to think. While you're thinking, let me just tell you this. Letterboxd. You've heard of Letterboxd. It's our very favorite place to review movies and keep our film diary and talk about all the movies we've talked about on all of the various shows. And this one's going to be there. Like it or not, it's going to be there. And if you want to put your reviews up there, you can, because you're going to go to Letterboxd and you're going to fall in love with it and you're going to say, oh my God, I love this so much, but there are ads and I just wish that I could get rid of the ads and support the incredible Kiwi team of folks who make Letterboxd happen. You can do that. Just use the code NEXTREEL at checkout when you upgrade your pro or patron account from the free account, and you'll get 20% off. It works for reviews or renewals, I should say, as well as new accounts. There you go. Okay. Here we go. Out of 5 stars, where do you stand, JJ?
Well, so I gave it 2.5. And I think one of the interesting things that I've found, and that I'm looking at the way that other people are rating this movie, is that it has a fair amount of like 5 stars and a whole lot of 1 stars, like a mess of 1 stars for like an average of 2.8. But
And
there's very little stuff in the middle.
You're just
right?
batting the average.
It's this
is what
kind
you're
of thing.
saying.
Well, it's this kind of thing of, this is why I know it's great / profound art, because a lot of people hate it and a few people really love it. And I think for me, because it's the kind of movie that I want, but I can't find a way to get into it, it falls in that middle for me. I want this movie to work. It didn't connect with me in the way that it did. This conversation is making me feel better about it. It even brings me over to the maybe heart side. But for me, it was a 2.5 stars because I want this movie out there, but it's a no heart because I didn't enjoy the experience. So I think that's where I sit on it. And I think I could easily, just like you're saying, Pete, 6 years, I might be on either side of that fence. But that's where I am today. 2.5 and no heart.
All right, Tom.
I'm higher. I don't know why I said it like that. That's the guy that just found out how numbers work. Heart and 3.75. And I look forward.
What? 3.75?
Because 3 isn't enough. I want it to be over half. But 4 sounds dangerous. I want to give myself chances to grow to 4 when I see it again.
All right, but this
Or
is
go
going to really
down.
disappoint you then. I cannot give you 3.75
Why?
on Letterboxd. You only get half stars. There's no quarter
Half
stars.
and half.
There's 3.5 or 4.
It's not Star Search. It's
This isn't Star Search? All right, then 3.5, but with an asterisk like that one baseball player that I don't know who he is.
You talking about Barry Bonds?
Right.
Maybe.
3.5 with a heart and a asterisk. Okay. I am I like this movie more than you guys. I'm going to go all the way up from Tommy's 3.75 to 4.0 with a heart. And we'll see. But I like that this film exists. I like it in my memory banks, and it helps me think about my own garbage too. So movies are what we bring to them, and this one, I guess I'm a throbbing heart.
In an attic.
Okay, so what do we have coming up? What do we have coming up? We've got next month. So this one, JJ, is for you as somebody who has never seen any of these other movies. We're doing Fast 10.
X.
Can you tell me what your plan is for getting ready for this movie? Have you figured it out?
I haven't. I've got a bunch of different ideas, but I think I just am going to spend a lot of time thinking about family.
That's good. As
Right?
good a bit of homework as I could possibly imagine.
I think we should have a competition on the podcast to see how many people you can name that aren't in it.
Yeah, right.
Because this has the largest cast in the entire world. The poster says "See other poster."
Tom, are you excited about this movie? Are you big Fast fan?
No, but I like it. I get turned on by other people's excitement. Like I'll make sure to go see it with like Johnny Goddamn Giacalone, someone that like this, and probably shell out for like the seats that move.
Oh,
like an Xbox or whatever,
Yeah.
D-Box or something like that.
Is that a thing? RPX will work for this?
I would think so.
Go big.
Yeah, so I might as well. And then it's fun. Sure.
How do they possibly level up the last movie? I don't know. It was so ridiculous. I think they're actually going to colonize Mars with a racetrack. Like that would be amazing. That's what's coming next month. We're very excited about it. Thank you so much for hanging out. I imagine that there are going to be a number of people who listen to this show without actually seeing Beau Is Afraid. I hope, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I think the movie's unspoilable. So let me just tell you, we talked about a lot of beeps that happened in this movie. The experience is actually seeing the whole thing. So, if you're at all provoked by this conversation, go see the whole thing and, pay some money to go see it if you want to support movies that exist like this, because that's a good thing to do for movies. Do it for movies.
Agreed.
Do it for movies. That's so dumb. Thank you, everybody. On behalf of Tommy Handsome and JJ, I'm Pete, and we'll see you next month right here on the Film Board.